Greetings. Here are ideas and information intended to help you navigate the minefield of life's many problems that I have gained through a self realization process known as advanced perception. Through advanced perception, we learn that we are not getting working answers to our problems because we're asking the wrong questions. So if you have an open mind and understand that you have absolutely nothing to lose, here it is. But this is not free. It requires that you pay attention. Do you think you work too hard or too fast? Is hustle culture part of your life, but you feel it's not being talked about with any real depth at all? Well, that's what we're going to be taking a deep dive into right now. Hello, this is Ernest. Welcome. There's one thing I know for certain. Everywhere I go, when I'm running errands, such as Costco, grocery shopping, or even a sit-down restaurant, the regular mundane things we all need to do. Everyone working in these places, almost without fail, are working entirely too damn fast. Now, if you're not noticing this, there could be several reasons, but the most common one is what's known as the boiling frog effect. And if you don't know what that is, I'll tell you. If you take a frog and toss it into a small pot of boiling water, it will instantly jump out. But because frogs are reptilians and therefore don't regulate their body temperatures, if you put a frog in a cool pot of water, we're assuming that the frog doesn't jump out of the pot for any other reason, and slowly raise the temperature, the frog will in fact just eventually cook. The frog cooks because it doesn't have the perceptual mechanisms to realize it's being cooked. This, in large part, is what's occurring today, because virtually no one under the age of 40 has any reference point of just how dramatically they're overworking. If for simply any other reason, they didn't exist when I did. I have carefully observed that most workers today are working at a pace that would have been both demeaning and ridiculous when I was in my 20s. Young people today are expected to work at a pace 2 to 3 times what would have been normal in 1985. Yet people are wondering why so much of society is breaking down and going crazy. Most people today are not working, they're slaving. Now, perhaps everything I've said so far is new to you, or if not, you may be thinking, well, due to his age, he should know all of this. Anyone his age should know all of this. But I can assure you that is not the case. Because many people that are my age today are still no more aware of what's actually going on around them than they were in their mid-20s. This is the very reason why there is advanced perception and why it's so important. It's one thing to be utterly clueless at 20. It's quite another to be so at age 60. One of the primary reasons many people feel depressed and dissatisfied is because they are not where they should be in life. Yet because in the very small amount of recuperation time they have, if they bother to even think about it at all, they're not able to connect the dots due to a lack of introspection, because they are working very hard to get someone else somewhere, whereas they themselves don't get anywhere. And the reason they don't connect these dots in turn, why they lack the advanced perception to do so, is they are too busy working. It's the classic case of the dog chasing its tail. So the first step in getting rid of this dysfunctionality due to a lack of perception is stop being the dog chasing its tail. You simply have to start acting as opposed to reacting. By doing so, you will come to realize that you will never, ever produce enough or work fast enough as far as your employer is concerned, and you will never earn enough money because, as far as your employer is concerned, if they spoke honestly, which they seldom do, you are nothing but an inconvenient profit-parasite they wish would just go away. And they're working very hard, both with robotics and AI, to make sure that happens ASAP. This is the reason why, now more than ever, you need the power of advanced perception, because it is your single most powerful weapon to survive an increasingly insane and hostile world. Consider this for a moment. How much of what I have just said were you already aware of? If you were already fully aware of all this, good for you. But if you weren't aware of any of that, and if you hadn't been directed via synchronicity to this message, well, synchronicity is great when it's there, but that is not always the case, which is why it's always better to have an advanced perception. But you see, even though everything I just said is absolutely true, that's still only part of a much bigger issue. Do you want to be utterly possessed with the notion of fulfilling someone else's vision? Or do you want to create and possess your own? I can tell you with absolute assurance that until you make the decision to possess your own life, until you make the decision to stop living vicariously, you will remain depressed and unsatisfied. Not because you may not be earning the kind of money that you really would like, but because your spirit is being subjugated. But fortunately, something can be done to change that. What needs to be done is a fundamental change in attitude. And that's exactly the easy part, because that will occur automatically once you fully understand what's taking place in a given situation. Your attitude changes when you can look at a situation and clearly see not only what it's about in general, but how it affects your life specifically. And that in turn is achieved through, you guessed it, advanced perception. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been betrayed? Having experienced it more than once myself, I believe it's absolutely one of the most powerful emotional experiences a person ever endures. But betrayal is a continuum, a spectrum. At one end, there are childhood betrayals, something very silly, such as, promising a friend to keep a secret from another friend who stole a mutual friend's candy bar, then giving away the secret anyway to another person. Well, it really makes you mad at your friend when you're 9 years old. Then, at the other end of the spectrum, in the adult world, it might be confessing the knowledge of a lover's or husband's or wife's infidelity to the significant other. And as I'm sure many of you may know, this realization of betrayal has very frequently resulted in murder. Now pay attention, because here is the important point. So in conclusion, because of what had occurred, is an instant and fundamental change in attitude. And because of that radical change in attitude, a person can now potentially do anything. Things that before the attitude change, they couldn't even imagine doing. And that entire process begins by developing advanced perception. I really hope you found this helpful or interesting. So if you want to know more or have any questions at all, you can reach out to me via my website link in the description below. And if you really want to give me a compliment, telling a friend about the show would be the best compliment you could ever give me. Until next time, this is Ernest, and I usually always am